So, we have Halloween happening behind me somewhere. um, so I mostly just rambled on at the end of, my last storyline video. Um, which I don't know what exactly the uploading schedule is gonna be. I potentially broke the editing again, which is fun because I didn't even edit it this time and I still broke it. Um, but, so I thought I'd just kind of continue on with where I was. Which is to say, basically, I had therapy and got off of uh, being on safety, and then I got my level phase. I'm a 2 now. Um, which I looked, as I was reading through the letters, it occurred to me that phase 2 is actually where you start being able to do fire stuff. It was phase 1 where you couldn't do fire stuff. So during phase 2, I start to get together my FDFK and just do normal stuff. It's where you start to learn how to make a fire, which, again, to remind everyone, if you don't successfully make a fire, you eat cold soaked whatever your food is going to be. So, instead of having warm chili, it's chili that has instead just sat in a pot and soaked up moisture, which is it's about as bad as it sounds, if not a little worse. Um, so that's why you need to make a fire. Which I think I showed promise fairly quickly. I was a little bit spooked with it. But once I got good at it, I could make a fire in under 5 minutes, and that's pretty impressive consistently, especially considering how much it rains there. But so for the rest of that expo, I kind of got into the swing of things. Every Monday is still bead ceremony. Every night we do a little group, which is led by a student, and you could be, usually you get assigned to do it by your therapist, but you can also lead one just for fun. So, one of the, for instance, one of the groups that I had to lead, which was assigned to me by the therapist, was, I forget exactly what it is, but it's like this triangle, and you have, like, rational thought, emotional thought, and then, like, something else. I'm definitely not explaining it well. It's a therapy thing. If you've been in extensive therapy, you've probably seen it. Um, but yeah, so I had to lead a group on that once, and it was essentially you try to get other people involved in it so that nobody falls asleep, but you don't necessarily have to. You can also just stand up and lecture for a while, and that's that. Um, so you either get told to lead a group or not. And so got into the swing of things. People led groups. I involved myself in the groups. We still did before breakfast and dinner weird cheers and stuff, and I started to sort of get accustomed to it, but not in a way that I was comfortable. I remember thinking a lot, this is my life now. Just I can't believe I'm gonna be here doing this for who knows how long. And that was probably the worst bit of it, was just I don't know how long this is gonna be. And one of the things that happened was, so in that same rainstorm that I got especially drenched, right after Debo, um, I had both my journal and my, Facebook in the brain of my pack, and, so they both got drenched, which was great. Um, but the journal, the way that it got wet was so that the cover peeled into two pieces. And initially I was trying to keep it from peeling, but eventually it peeled all the way, and I was like, well, what do I do with this? So what I started doing was I kept a tally at the top on the outside page of the cover, and then on the inside page of the cover, I kept on one side a list of, every week or 2 weeks or whenever, they do, like, they ask everybody, hey, do you need anything? Right? So if you've lost all your pencils, you can ask for more pencils. Or if you've completely filled up your journal, which does happen, I went through 3, you can get a new journal. Or if you ruined like 3 pairs of boxers, or you just want more underwear, you can have more underwear. So they order it, and then it'll come to the area, and then they just basically stand around like, okay, who ordered this? So on the one side, I would keep a list of stuff that I needed, and on the other side, I would keep, like, sort of a complicated calendar. Which it wasn't necessarily that complicated, but I guesstimated that I would be there for 80 days, right? So I wrote 1 through 80 all the way in a little grid, and every single day I would cross off one of those days. And sometimes it would make me feel better to, especially once I got a little bit further in, to look at that and go, hey, look, I'd only have to cross off 10 more days and I'm at 80. So I'm almost out of here, you know? Or like, hey, I only have to cross off 20 more days. Which at the beginning it was very discouraging because it was like, yay, I still have to cross off 75 more days. Okay, gonna be here a while. But it got more encouraging the longer I had it going, and I knew it would, which was helpful. So I created that little bit, and I was tallying off the days on that, and I would do it every single day. Sometimes I'd forget for a day or two, but I would always be able to figure out how many days it had been since I'd done it based off of the little tasks that they gave you at the back of the journal. Which eventually I did start doing those, including just randomly calling Charlie and busting Fabs, because at that point I wanted to phase up and I wanted to be out of there. And I figured if I could just buckle down and get into the swing of things and try to just forget, that I could get through it. Which is where something that'll probably be a theme in the coming things started, which was the reason it was so traumatizing to me, more traumatizing to leave than it was to get there, was because I convinced myself, in order to keep from completely going insane, that there had never been anything outside of where I was. And it was slow, and by the time I got finally to it, I had convinced myself that there was nothing outside of the boarding school. That nothing existed. I never had a family. I never lived in the house. I never ate at McDonald's. I'd never done any of those things. They were all just dreams. Just really good dreams. And the more I could convince myself that, the sadder I got, but the easier it was to bear it. The easier it was to not completely lose my mind. So, that was where that started, was just forget. Forget that anything had ever happened before. Forget that I ever had a life that wasn't this. And the faster you forget, the better you do. And, which that's part of the reason that they call it Wilder crazy as a joke, which the real connotation behind it would be that after a certain amount of time at Wilderness, you sort of stop caring about social norms. You start to fart openly, and talking about what you did in the bathroom that morning became a normal breakfast conversation. And it was just loads of weird stuff like that just doesn't really make sense to an outsider. And that is what technically is Wilder crazy, but while I was there, I was a different sort of crazy. I don't even know how to describe it. I honestly don't remember a lot of what my mental state was like, but it was like it was forgetting what I looked like first. What I looked like. Because I hadn't seen myself in a mirror in so long. to the point that when I finally did, I didn't recognize myself. And then, like, forgetting what real food tastes like, and slowly forgetting more and more things about how to be normal, and not just ignoring them, but forgetting them. Forgetting stuff that you need to know to fit in society. Which, while it's freeing, it changes you. And that combined with daily starvation and walking miles and miles and miles with a pack that was too heavy for me, wheezing up every single hill, and sleeping on the cold ground, and not knowing what it feels like to touch another person besides just the palm of your hand, for months and months. 92 days. By the end of that, you're not the same. It's solitary confinement without being alone. I look back at who I was before, and I was not the same person. Before, I felt things. I felt emotions. I felt attraction to people. I felt And it's in 12 days on the 18th of October. It will be the anniversary, the 3rd year anniversary of when I got out of all of it and left entirely. When I was finally freed, and in those 3 years, I just don't feel. I laugh, and I occasionally cry. That's a rare occurrence. I do normal stuff and I react normally, but I don't feel it. It's like before all of the emotions were like touching a patch of raw skin. Like, you really feel that. You know what's happening. You could just barely brush up against it and you know. And now it's like trying to get myself to feel something through a leather jacket. I can rub my hand up and down as much as I want, but I'm not getting the raw feeling, I'm just getting pressure. It changes you. Anyway, so the rest of that expo was primarily just, hanging out and doing our shit. I worked on level work. I got pretty far in my level book. I don't think I completely finished it because that's where you start needing to assemble an FDFK, which, like I said, we very rarely went on supply runs for them. So it took me until we got all the way back to base, I believe, to actually get together a full FDFK. And then, after that, there's some stuff that you have to talk about with your therapist before it can be signed off, like your therapist has to sign it off. So if you get it done the day after you have therapy, you gotta wait the whole week to talk to the therapist and get it done, which I think was literally only intended to slow you down. Because it was like, realistically, if those are things that you have to talk to your therapist about, shouldn't you be doing them in therapy when they come up? Because, like, there were times where I phased up and didn't realize that there was a therapist-related one in there until after I'd already had therapy and was like, well, shit, now there's no point in doing this right now. Like, I could procrastinate a whole week and it wouldn't matter. But anyway, so, that time, if any of you are curious where exactly we were hiking, that was in Panthertown in North Carolina. I don't know why it's called Panthertown, but I know we told specifically a pretty good scary story about um it was called Panther Screams. We had a while where we would sit in a group and just tell scary stories, and then other students started to not like the scary stories. So we started sitting in a separate circle for those who wanted to tell the scary stories at dinner. And then eventually they were like, the other group members can still hear it, so you can't ever tell scary stories again. And we were like, really? That's like all we have fun to do right now. Like, come on, man. We've got nothing better to be doing. It's not like we can, like, there's not much to talk about. None of us want to talk about home. The last thing we want to do is remind ourselves that we're here. So, ran out of fun thing to do. So, that blows. But that was also through the scary storytelling, that was where I kind of started to make friends with some of the group members. Was because I really enjoy a good scary story. Like, if you can, like, I love everything scary. Like, haunted houses and, like, American Horror Story and scary movies and, scary stories and r/no sleep and just everywhere that I can find a scary story, I'm hella game for it. And I've even got a couple that I tell on my own that are pretty good, including some that I've made up. So that was where I sort of started to make friends with people, was I recognized, okay, this group of people like something that I like. Something that I like a lot that does not have to remind me of not being here. So that was where I sort of started talking with people. And, so finally we get to be done with Expo, and, we've only ever hiked in Panthertown the one time. So after that, we left, and we came out into this, like, parking lot situation, and there were, like, people. And I'd never felt so comforted to see somebody that wasn't a part of our group before. Like, I remember one of the things that I thought about a lot on that expo was anytime we went down a path that had gravel or had a bridge that we had to cross, it comforted me so much. Because I was not ready to be out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, with no concept of where humanity is, and feeling like I'm completely alone, and scared. And, like, I wasn't ready for the major shift from living in a quiet suburban neighborhood to living in the woods. Which, nowadays, I enjoy the woods, and it's a very nice break from actual people. But back then, I just wasn't ready for it. I was not ready to just be thrown right in like that. So finally we get to a parking lot, and I'm on the verge of tears because there's cars, and there's people are talking, and there's people that don't have packs that look like they're gonna be out here for 8 days, and, like, there's a dog, and there's just people everywhere, but, like, I'm not allowed to talk to any of them. At all, for any reason. The only time we are allowed to respond to somebody else is if we are, like, lost, and it's like a police officer or something that's coming to help get us back to the group, in which case I'd still book it anyway, but when we're either lost or we have, like, if somebody comes up and says, like, hello, we're allowed to briefly answer, which is sort of a gray area because they don't want to encourage us. Sorry, paranoia. They don't want to encourage us. If anybody wants to know what I'm imagining sneaking up behind me right now, I'm imagining from that hallway back there. There was the one Doctor Who episode where there's, like, this shrouded figure that's chasing him across the castle, but, like, very, very slowly. So, like, if he runs all the way across the castle, he has, like, 10 hours or something to just hang out. That's what I'm imagining right now, and it's not a fun image. But anyway, so we're allowed to briefly answer. Like, I know there was one time where somebody came up to us and was like, "Oh, are you a Girl Scout troop?" And then looked at me, who I was told later by the group that when I first came to the group, they genuinely thought that I was like one of the Bravo boys graduating. And they were like, "Wait, it's not a Tuesday. All grads happen on Tuesday." So they were very confused, and one of the group members, it took them until like 2 months into me being there and me having a conversation with her about being trans to finally realize that I was not born a boy and am for some reason in this group. Like, she genuinely thought they'd made a mistake. Which might have just been said to boost my confidence, but if it was, it made me happy. And so, oh my god, this fucking thing. Leave me alone. So, we had one time where somebody came up and was like, "Are you a Girl Scout troop?" And we were like, not really." And they were like, "Well, what are you doing?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're just like a hiking group, and, we just come out here and hike together." And they were like, "Oh, we ran into another group like that," which is where I was like, "Ooh, there's more than one group of us in the area." Um, so, it's sort of like, it's a gray area. You want to respond to be polite, but like you're not allowed to have like an in-depth conversation, which I think is 99%, so that we're not all like, "Hi, none of us are here, like, we're all here against our will right now, by the way." Because obviously if we say that, they're gonna go call the police, and technically, if you don't know, what happens is they sign over, like, the parents sign over their parenting rights to that place, which is why they can get away with so much of what they get away with, because technically, they own us right now. We belong to them. Not even our parents own us at that point. And the only time that they own us again is when we get signed back. So, that sucks. And so, one of the, so, basically they don't want the cops getting called, I imagine. Because there's absolutely no other reason I could think of to not let us talk to strangers. Like, they're just nice people. Who cares? So, we're all just kind of standing around. We've set our packs down and we're just doing whatever we're doing. And, I'm looking around and, we're near these houses, right? And we're making jokes about, like, we should all go in and, like, steal all their Nutella and, like, whatever else. And, like, it's all about food. Like, none of us care about anything else. We're like, let's go steal food from these people. Like, legitimately, let's go steal food from these people. If we thought we could have gotten away with it, I think we would have. But yeah, so we're all joking around about that, and finally, like, this big white van pulls up, like one of those work vans that you see, and the staff start heading that way, so we all start heading that way. And everybody else knows what's going on, but I have no clue what's going on. And it turns out what they do is, normally, they drive you between each of the stages. So from Expo to Sky Valley, we are going to get to go in a car, which is a wonderful concept to me at this point, because I have not been in a car in ages. Like 2 weeks, and I like car rides a lot. So I'm excited to be in the car. I specifically asked for a window seat because I do get car sick. I can sit not in the front seat, but I have to have a window next to me. So I explained that to the staff, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, that's cool." So they put me in a window seat, and we load all of our backpacks into, like, a little trailer at the back of it, like an open air one, and then we have a net that we put over it and, like, bungee cord down so that the packs don't fall out. Sorry, trying to remember where something important happened. It's not yet. So we all load up in the car, and, before we start moving, one of the staff, like, briefly explains to me, "Okay, while you're in the car, you are allowed to sing to whatever music is playing, but you're not allowed to talk. You are allowed to sleep while you're in the car, but you have to still respect boundaries while you're sleeping," which is what they would call not touching each other, which I thought that was a joke, so I laughed. And they were like, "No, seriously, like, if you fall asleep, you can't fall over onto somebody." And I was like, "But I'm asleep." I don't have control over that. Like, what about the people in the middle? They're gonna lean one way or the other, and they're like, well, then we wake them up, and then we push them back up, and then they're good. And I'm like, you're gonna wake somebody who's asleep up because while they were asleep they fell over? That's just a dick move, man. So that was fun. Not really. But the car ride did turn out to be one of the best portions because depending on the driver, a lot of them had Spotify, so they'd like play whatever they figured that we wanted to listen to. And some of them would take requests beforehand. I know everybody there was super into Hamilton, which is where I got into Hamilton, and now I can sing like every song without the music. But so there was one who would specifically play Hamilton all the way there and back. And just stuff like that. Like, we got to listen to music, which, other than that, we never got to listen to music, and we were all pretty happy to sit down for an extended period of time on comfortable seats that weren't the floor, because even when we're on base, the only time you get to sit in a chair is at Teacher Dave's place. So it was just a nice break. So finally we get to wherever we're going, and it's all too soon. Like, I wished for a much longer ride in the car, but so we get to a place called Sky Valley, which I knew that we were going to Sky Valley from the time that we left, but I'd never been there. And we get out of the car, and in front of us is this, like, really big, almost a lake, like, but a little pond. And it's fairly big, like, it would take you probably an hour to walk all the way around the outside of it. And it was, like, not hurriedly, but at a leisurely, having a stroll pace. And it was beautiful, and, like, there were trees, and there was a path, and, like, it felt like the middle of nowhere still, but it was a beautiful middle of nowhere rather than the scary woods. And so we're just kind of sitting there hanging out. I believe we left on a Tuesday because I remember having the tuna. So we had our gross tuna lunch, which this time somebody convinced me to try it with mustard, and it was marginally better. At least it wasn't just tuna. That was pretty gross. We dared one of the staff to eat an entire tuna packet whole. Or not tuna, mustard packet whole, and the staff actually did it. And so, we're just chilling. And finally they're like, okay, gather up your packs, we're gonna go to our place, and we're like, okay, cool. And so we're following the staff, and it's just like, suddenly it feels like endless walking again, and I'm like, oh god, are we really this far away from, like, everywhere? And as we're walking, like, we follow the lake for a little bit, and then we kind of slowly go into the woods. And so by the time we get to where we are, we can't see the lake anymore, we can't see anything besides trees again, and I'm like, oh, great. But honestly, Sky Valley was probably my favorite place there. Just because it was still nature, but it wasn't unbearable nature. Like, it wasn't terrifying. It would be a really good place for a new student to start, would be at Sky Valley, because then you get a taste of, you're not going to be comfortable. Like, this is going to suck. And then you get to go to base, and you're like, okay, can be a little bit better here. And then you go on Expo, and you're like, oh god, that's the worst thing ever. But I have Sky Valley to look forward to. So, one of my friends texted me. Yay! Sorry, I don't frequently get texts. But anyway, so, we're doing our thing, and we get up there, and they're like, okay, so here's the pack shed. We put our backpacks in there. When we go to sleep, you come in here and you get your sleeping bag out and you bring it into the sleeping area. And, just stuff like that. Like, okay, here's a thing. And then there's the eating area, which, one of the nice things about Sky Valley is instead of having to, like, hang your bear bags from a tree every night, which is one of the worst parts about Expo. You get to put them in a bear box, which is basically just like a steel box with a really heavy door that closes in such a way, like it doesn't necessarily lock, but it closes in such a way that a bear could not open it. And the thing about Sky Valley is there is a bear that hangs around there regularly. He's a black bear, so he's not horrendously dangerous, but black bears are not friendly. They're mostly not dangerous, but if you accidentally startle one, they will maul you. And you're not going to be able to outrun one. Do not climb a tree. They're better at it than you are. Like, if you piss off this bear, you're dead. And so we did have one that hung around called Jarhead. Whatever animal is making noises, can you not? I'm gonna close that, because I'm starting to get freaked out. 1 second. Oh yeah, that's helpful, just creepy hands. Oh, if something paranormal happens, my channel might blow up. That was the time, ghosts. But, so, we have, the bear boxes, which are hard to open, and Jarhead, who will try to open them. And it's, honestly, not a lot happens on Sky. 2 times during Sky Valley, you get to go see Science Steve, who mostly just lectures and plays videos about different science stuff, which I enjoyed because I've always enjoyed science, and it was nice to watch something. Like, just sit there and watch something. Like, that was a novel concept. By the time I'd been there 92 days, it was like, we just get to sit down and stare at a screen for like an hour. It's great! And, so, we do Science Steve, everybody still goes to therapy once a week. Which by that point, like, therapy with Ashley was mostly just kind of talking. Like, there wasn't really anything particularly important that we spoke about. It was just kind of stuff. But then also by the time, so I will now explain my 10-minute fire. Also by the time we got to Sky Valley, I was ready to do my 10-minute fire. Which, I'm sorry in advance if I do get anything out of order, I'll correct it later, but I believe this is when this happened. A lot of my memory is foggy around the time. So, a 10-minute fire is basically, you have to strike and catch on char cloth, blow up a tinder bundle with the char cloth, and after blowing up the tinder bundle, you have to get the fire to knee-high, and then keep it going for 10 minutes. If the flames shrink below knee-high, time restarts. If you run out of sticks, too bad. You can try to run off and grab some more, but you're not going to get back by the time it's restarted at that point. You might as well just stop. And just a whole bunch of other stuff. And so how mine went was, so I had char cloth from the expo, because we made char cloth on that expo, which all you do is you put, plain cotton, like washcloths almost, just fabric. I like a thicker fabric. And you put them in, like, a box. Technically, you're supposed to do it in an Altoid tin, but you can do it in a bigger box to make more at once, which is what we usually do. So you smush them in there, you get the top on, and then you put it in the fire and you bury it in coals. Really? I know I don't have space. Can you not interrupt me? So, you get it in the box and you bury it in coals, and instead of burning up the cloth, it sort of chars it. And then once it's been in there for a certain amount of time, I don't know how much, people were saying, one of the things that I was told was, like, when you see fire, oh, I forgot, you poke holes in the lid of it so that it has room to breathe. And what people were saying was, like, when you have fire coming out of those holes, it's ready. So you take it out of the fire, and then you bury it in the ground. And basically you just wait until it's probably cooled off. So, like, you just ignore its existence for, like, a couple hours. If you forget it overnight, that's fine. And when you come back, you have char cloth. And what that is it's just extremely easy to catch on fire. Except it doesn't catch properly on fire. What it does is it sort of... If you've ever burnt a leaf with a magnifying glass, that's what it does. It, like, goes from the center of wherever it is, and it just slowly spreads on out. Except it doesn't need the constant heat, it'll just keep burning itself up. So that would probably also be very easy to catch with magnifying glass. I did it with my glasses once just to prove a point. But anyway, so you catch onto the char cloth, and you put it in a tinder bundle, which, like I said, is basically anything flammable. Shelby actually did her 10-minute fire with just leaves. Like, didn't feel like making a tinder bundle, so she just picked up some leaves and was like, I'm gonna blow this up, and it worked. So, cool. It was not as successful as my 10-minute fire, but it worked. And so, I get to the point where I've blown it up, it's on fire, I'm kind of freaking out, because I'm still not used to holding things that are actively on fire, which I got very used to. Which is probably good, because I like to cook, so now if something lights on fire, I'll just be like, oh, that's new. Lid. But, so, I've blown it up and it's caught. So then I set it down, you sort of set it down so, like, say it's round like this, and this is one edge of it. You set it down in such a way that, like, this part is on fire, so it's not completely smothering it, but it's also not on top, because it won't burn well on top. It has to sort of burn up from the bottom. So you set it down like that, and then you start putting sticks over the fire, just very small sticks, and if you're smart, you put them all the way around it as well. Which there were a lot of different techniques to it, and the technique that I use is basically you just slowly put sticks on it in such a way that the fire is catching onto them and all the way around it, so that way it'll eventually catch that backside too. And then you just slowly build up from small sticks to bigger sticks to biggest sticks to, like, if you can find a log, burn that. And then there were also different techniques to cooking with it and all of that sort of stuff. You want a different shape of fire if you're going to cook. Like, for instance, if you're going to cook, you want to put them in a box shape so that you can set the pot down right in the middle. But if you're going to cook on a pan or a grate, you want to just use the typical, like, mess of a fire way where at least everything's burning evenly. But also if you're going to cook on a grate or in a pan, you want to let it get down to coals first. And keep the fire going off in the corner so that you can bring the fire back onto the coals once you're done. But you want to cook on coals rather than on an open flame, except if it's a pot, in which case you do want a flame. So different shapes of fire, different ways of doing things, that's just, you get used to it. But anyway, so for the 10-minute fire, all you do is you want one of the fires where it's like you just put the sticks in such a way that it forms like a little teepee shape. And because that will get you the most height with the actual wood itself, so that way you don't have to try to make, like, weirdly high flames. So I start putting the little sticks on, and they're not catching. So I put a couple more sticks on, and they're not catching. So I break out my hemlock, and I start putting those sticks on, which are usually very flammable, and they're sort of catching, but they're not doing well, and I'm like, ah, fuck. And it's going out, and I'm like, ha, and finally I just kind of panicked and dumped the whole bag of hemlock on it, and it was like 5 seconds of like, okay, my 10-minute fire failed, and then it was just whoosh! And suddenly I've got this big fire, and I was like right down next to it blowing on it, so I lost like probably to here on my bangs at that point. And, like, oh man, I thought I was gonna die. And, so suddenly I've got a very large fire. So now I'm, like, quickly breaking apart my, sticks to put in there, because the thing with small sticks is they catch easily, but they burn fast. So if the fire is this big, it's gonna go out in, like, 10 seconds. So I'm frantically breaking apart sticks, and I'm like, I should have done this first! And the staff was like, you probably should have! And I was like, you're not helping! And so I'm, like, throwing stuff frantically on the fire, and, like, finally I get it to a point where it's sort of steady, and I'm like, how long do I have? And then staff's like, you got like 2 minutes, and I was like, woohoo! I have like all of the wood left, this is great! And So one of, I think it was Harley, no, Harley graded, ooh, I forgot to mention, Harley graded during that first expo. Same with the girl that came up and booped my nose. So, two more people gone. Which means we are now down to, -2 plus 3. We're at like 14 now? 11, 14. Yeah, 14 not counting me. Hey, I got that right fast. But anyway, so, we're, there was somebody, I don't know who was sitting next to them, the staff, and, like, looking at the stopwatch with the staff, which they allowed for this scenario, because 10-minute fire, it's fun. And, so we get to 30 seconds, so they start counting down, like, 30, 29, 28, and by the time we were, like, 10, 9, 8, everybody was joined in, and it was so much fun. And so I finally got it signed off in my level book. We burnt the rest of the wood just for fun. Um, and that's the story of how I both lost a lot of hair and did my 10-minute fire. Um, so that was basically Sky Valley for me that time, was just kind of getting accustomed to it. And then, as we were leaving Sky Valley that time, the newbies who had just gotten their phase 2s, had not quite gotten, like, hadn't gotten their level books yet, and we're all like, oh, I wonder when they're gonna get them. And we were leaving base, listening to Hamilton, and as we're driving out of Sky Valley, one of the staff stops. They're like, "Wait, stop the car! Is there something in the road?" And none of us saw anything, so we're like, "What the fuck?" And the staff's like getting out of the car and like walking up, and we're like, "What's happening?" Like, whispering to each other really quietly to try to be like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And the staff comes in and they're like, "Oh, look, it's level books." So people got their phase 2s that way, which I thought was pretty creative. The staff always try to find something weird to do for it. Um, so we go back to base, and at this point, I have had 2 weeks to plot how I'm gonna run, and for some reason, like, I had it all planned out. It was gonna be, I would wait until it was the middle of the night. I am quiet enough to make it out onto the back porch. What I was doing was I was gonna just hope and pray that we didn't end up in the cabin with that big drop from the back porch, like the first cabin was. Because if we ended up with the drop from the back porch, that was gonna kind of ruin my plan. But what I figured I'd do was I would sneak out to where our boots are kept. I would grab the boots. I would put the boots on once I am a little ways away so that I don't make as much noise. And then I knew exactly where to go to get, the brain. Come on. I knew exactly where to go to find Libby. So, what I figured I'd do was I would just sneak out and sneak on down to that cabin. I figured at this point I could probably break a door down if I needed to, but I didn't think that anybody would be nearby there. So I figured worst comes to worst, I just break a window. And so I get in, grab Libby, grab my normal clothes, and change back into those. And then, like, pack everything up neat so that they don't realize I've done that. And then head out, and I figured I sort of knew the way to the closest town because we passed through it. But I figured what I'd do is I'd just keep on walking until I found a town. And from there, I would hopefully call actually the friend that just texted me and get out. And I would be free. And for whatever reason, by the time we got back to base, I just didn't have the will to do it. Like, I didn't know what it was, but I just couldn't bring myself to. So, around that time I did start, me and Shelby sort of started, like, starting to hang out, and, we got a little bit closer, and, base was mostly the same downtime. It was go to Teacher Dave's, and horse ands, and shovel horse shit for a while, and exist. And It was just, I might have to take a break between this video and figure out some more stories, but yeah, so we made it back to base. Me and Shelby started talking a little bit more. I was getting used to it. Very close to getting my phase 3 at that point. I think I had one more level thing to do and I completed it while I was on base. And yeah, last story, let's do that one. Sorry, I'm trying to be comfortable and my back doesn't like most of the positions, and then the other positions my legs don't like. So, so the way that I got my phase 3, I had finally finished my phase 2 Facebook, and, you know, I let all the staff know, and I was doing perfectly on getting to safety every single day, and, like, you know, like, I was like, hey, it be time. And the staff were like, yep, you'll get it when you're ready, and I'm like, think I'm ready. Feeling ready, man. I'm ready. Give it! And, so one time we were out, down at the same spot that I wrote the first letter, so with the little creek in the grassy area, and, so we were down there doing our thing, and, we had on shift, one of the staff was Cole, who was the one who wound up working there while pregnant, which she was, like, just barely pregnant, but, whew boy, I have been there and it was not fun. So, Cole gathers us all up, or I don't remember exactly how we got there, but it wound up with, everybody standing in a row on two sides with, like, their arms up like this, and Cole knew how to play the Native American flute, and it was very interesting music, which another scary story I'll tell you a scary story about that involves that flute because it's funny. But so they had me walk down the tunnel and she was like playing the flute like that, and I think I got like blessed with Sage or something, and that was when I got my level book, and I was like, yay, that was cool. Which I very much enjoyed that way of leveling up. I was half expecting my phase book to show up at Teacher Dave's, but it didn't. So I think I'm gonna end that video there. Reminder for myself, Flute Lady. So I will start next time off with, since it's about to be the expo that those became important, and I'm going to start off the next video with 2 scary stories that we told. So yeah. Yet again, if you want to share a video, I would be very happy to receive one. At this point, I'm sort of figuring it's going to be my stories and then the channel's going to fizzle and die, which, in that case, I guess it was fun while it lasted. I'm still sorry about the crazy uploading schedule. I'm still uploading, or at least I'm filming all of the videos on my off days, which is why it's gonna be like video of me in this shirt and looking like this, and then the next week it's gonna be video of whatever shirt I'm wearing that day. But yeah, so I hope the channel doesn't die, but at this point it's looking like it might. Nobody that I've asked has wanted to share a video, which it's okay. I'm just happy to get my story out here. I was hoping to start a movement or something, but I don't have to. If these stories help anybody at all, I will have done what I was hoping to do. So, I will see you in the next video, which for me will probably be 10 minutes, and for you guys will probably be I don't know how long. Depends on if I need to edit it. Or rather, if I need to make my fiance edit it. So, thank you for watching, and